Hey, welcome back, and if you're new here, I'm really glad you found this channel, because what I'm about to share with you today is something that affects millions of people just like you, and honestly, it's not getting nearly enough attention in the mainstream media. Now, I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes, because this is important. Whether you're already collecting Social Security, you're a few years away from retirement, or you're helping a parent or loved one navigate all of this, what Congress is quietly working on right now could mean real money in your pocket. We're talking about changes to your monthly benefits, your cost of living adjustments, and possibly even your Medicare premiums. I know, every few months someone says, big changes are coming, and then nothing happens. I get it. The skepticism is completely fair. But this time, something is genuinely moving through the legislative process. There are real numbers on the table, and real people whose lives are going to be shaped by what happens next. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's talk about this the way we always do, plainly, honestly, and in a way that actually makes sense. No jargon, no political spin. Just the truth about what's being proposed, what it means for you, and what you can do about it right now. Let's get into it. Let's start at the very beginning, because I think it's important to understand why Social Security is even being talked about in Congress right now, and why, if you're a senior or a retiree, you should absolutely be paying attention to these conversations even if politics isn't usually your thing. Social Security has been the backbone of retirement income in this country for nearly 9 decades. Since 1935, it has been the promise America made to its working people, that if you put in the years, if you pay into the system, when the time comes, the system will take care of you. And for a long time, it largely did what it promised. But here's the honest truth that most people in Washington don't say loudly enough: the Social Security Trust Fund is under serious financial pressure, and if nothing changes, projections suggest that benefits could be cut by as much as 20 to 25% within the next 10 years unless Congress acts. Now, I want to pause on that number for a moment, because I don't want it to scare you, I want it to inform you. A 20 to 25% cut would be devastating for tens of millions of Americans who depend on Social Security as their primary source of income. For someone receiving $1,800 a month right now, that's a reduction of $360 to $450 every single month. That's groceries. That's medication. That's utilities. That's the difference between getting by and genuinely struggling. And that is precisely why Congress, under real pressure from advocacy groups, economists, and frankly from seniors who are speaking up, has finally started putting serious reform proposals on the table. So what exactly is being proposed? Let me walk you through the major pieces of this new legislative push, because there are several moving parts and I want to make sure you understand each one clearly. The first and perhaps most talked about piece of reform is something called the Social Security Fairness Act, which has actually already passed in some form and is continuing to gain momentum. What this act addresses is a long-standing injustice that affected certain groups of retirees, specifically, public sector workers like teachers, firefighters, police officers, and government employees who worked jobs that didn't pay into Social Security in the traditional way. Because of two old provisions called the Windfall Elimination Provision and the Government Pension Offset, or WEP and GPO as they're commonly known, millions of these retirees saw their Social Security benefits either reduced or eliminated entirely, even if they had worked other jobs earlier in life that did pay into the system. The Social Security Fairness Act effectively rolls back these provisions, and for the people affected, this is not a small change. Some retirees are seeing increases of hundreds of dollars per month. Many are receiving back payments. If you or someone you know was a public sector worker and felt shortchanged by Social Security, this is the provision that directly speaks to your situation, and it is worth looking into right now. The second major piece of reform that's generating a lot of discussion is around the cost of living adjustment, or COLA. Now, most of you are familiar with COLA. It's the annual adjustment to your Social Security benefit that's supposed to keep pace with inflation. In theory, it sounds great. In practice, many seniors have felt for years that it doesn't actually reflect the real cost increases they experience in their daily lives. And here's why. COLA is currently calculated using something called the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, the CPIW. The problem? That index measures spending patterns for working-age people, not retirees. A 35-year-old worker and a 72-year-old retiree do not spend money the same way. Younger workers might spend more on transportation and electronics. Older Americans spend a disproportionately larger share of their income on healthcare, prescription drugs, and housing, all categories where inflation has been running significantly hotter than the overall index. What reform advocates and some members of Congress are pushing for is a switch to a different measurement tool called the CPIE, the Consumer Price Index for the elderly. Studies have shown that if Social Security COLA had been calculated using the CPIE over the past several decades, benefits today would be measurably higher. The difference might not sound like much in any single year, but compounded over time, the gap between the two calculations runs into thousands of dollars for individual retirees. This reform is being actively debated, and the outcome matters enormously for anyone who is currently receiving benefits or will receive them in the coming years. The third piece of the puzzle, and this one hits close to home for a lot of people, is the ongoing conversation about the income threshold for Social Security taxation. Right now, if your combined income, meaning your Social Security benefit plus any other income you have, exceeds certain thresholds, up to 85% of your Social Security benefit can be subject to federal income tax. Now, here's what makes many seniors genuinely angry about this: those income thresholds were set back in 1983 and 1993. They were never indexed to inflation. That means a threshold that was designed to affect only upper-income retirees when it was written has now crept down to affect millions of middle-class seniors who are simply trying to make ends meet. Reform proposals being discussed in Congress would raise or eliminate these thresholds entirely, so that ordinary retirees are not losing a significant chunk of their benefits to federal taxes on income that was never supposed to be taxed in the first place. This is one of those changes that wouldn't grab a lot of headlines but would quietly put real money back into the pockets of everyday retirees. Now I want to talk about something that I know weighs heavily on a lot of people, and that's the question of Medicare premiums and how they interact with your Social Security benefit. This is one of the most frustrating dynamics in the entire system, and it doesn't get talked about enough. There are years when Social Security announces a COLA increase, and seniors get excited, and then they discover that Medicare Part B premiums went up by almost exactly the same amount, effectively canceling out the raise they thought they were getting. This phenomenon even has a name: it's called the hold harmless provision, and while it protects some beneficiaries from seeing their net Social Security check go down, it still means that many retirees feel like they're running in place no matter what the numbers say on paper. Part of the current reform conversation includes proposals to better decouple Medicare premium increases from Social Security COLA calculations, so that a benefit increase actually shows up as a benefit increase in your checking account, not just on paper. Let me also talk about something that doesn't always come up in these discussions but absolutely should, and that's the projected solvency timeline of the Social Security Trust Fund itself. Depending on which analysis you read, the trust fund's reserves are projected to be depleted somewhere between 2033 and 2035. Now, it's critical to understand what that actually means, because there's a lot of fear and misinformation out there. Depletion of the trust fund reserves does not mean Social Security goes away. It means that at that point, the program would only be able to pay out what it collects in payroll taxes each year, which current projections put at roughly 75 to 80% of scheduled benefits. So yes, without reform, a benefit cut of around 20% is on the horizon. But that is not a certainty. It is a deadline. It is Congress's job to act before that deadline arrives, and the pressure on legislators to do exactly that is growing louder every single day. What reform proposals are being floated to address this solvency gap? There are a few different approaches, and they tend to fall roughly into two camps. On one side, you have proposals that focus on raising additional revenue into the system, primarily by lifting or eliminating the cap on earnings subject to Social Security payroll taxes. Right now, only the first $168,600 of earned income is subject to the Social Security payroll tax. Anything earned above that cap is completely exempt. Lifting that cap, so that higher earners pay Social Security taxes on more of their income, would generate significant additional revenue for the trust fund. On the other side of the debate, you have proposals that focus on adjustments to the benefit structure, including modest changes to how benefits are calculated for higher income retirees, or gradual adjustments to the full retirement age going forward. Most economists and policy experts will tell you that the most realistic path forward involves some combination of both approaches, some additional revenue, some modest structural adjustments, rather than relying entirely on one side of the equation. And here's what I find genuinely encouraging about where we are right now: the conversation in Congress has shifted. For years, Social Security reform was the so-called third rail of American politics: touch it and you're politically finished. Nobody wanted to be the person who talked about changes to Social Security. But the combination of approaching trust fund depletion, high inflation that has squeezed retirees in recent years, and growing political engagement from senior advocacy groups has created a moment where real, meaningful reform feels more possible than it has in a long time. Organizations like AARP, the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, and dozens of others have been working at the grassroots and legislative level to push these conversations forward, and they are making progress. I also want to take a moment to talk directly about what this all means emotionally, because I think we sometimes get so caught up in the numbers and the policy language that we forget what we're really talking about. We're talking about people who worked for 30, 40, sometimes 50 years. People who got up early and came home late and raised families and contributed to their communities and trusted that when they reached this stage of life, there would be something there to catch them. Social Security isn't a handout, it's a promise. It's deferred compensation. It's money that workers and their employers paid in, year after year, with the understanding that it would be there when it was needed. The fight to protect, strengthen, and expand Social Security benefits is not a partisan fight. It is a human one. And if you're watching this right now and you've been feeling anxious about your financial future, maybe your benefit isn't stretching as far as it used to, maybe you're watching your savings dwindle, maybe you're scared about what happens if your health needs increase, I want you to know that your concerns are completely valid and you are not alone. Millions of Americans are in exactly the same position, and the reason these policy conversations matter so deeply is because they are about real quality of life for real people. So what can you do right now? First and most practically, make sure you're connected to your Social Security account online at ssa.gov. Create your My Social Security account if you haven't already, because that's where you can see your earnings history, your projected benefit amounts, and any notices about changes that affect you. Second, reach out to your members of Congress. I know that sounds like something people always say and never do, but I want to encourage you, this genuinely matters. A phone call, a letter, an email to your senator or representative telling them that Social Security reform is a priority for you is not a small thing. Congressional offices track this. They count it. Your voice is part of how the legislative priorities get shaped. Third, stay informed, and be careful about where you get your information. There is a tremendous amount of misinformation floating around about Social Security, and some of it is deliberately designed to confuse or frighten seniors. Stick to reliable sources, the Social Security Administration's own website, AARP, the Congressional Budget Office, and reputable financial news outlets. And honestly, channels like this one that take the time to break things down clearly and without an agenda. I want to close this section by saying something I believe deeply: your retirement years should not be characterized by financial fear. You earned the right to live with dignity and security. The reforms being discussed in Congress right now, if they move forward in the right direction, have the genuine potential to make a meaningful positive difference in the lives of millions of seniors. That is worth paying attention to, worth advocating for, and worth talking about with the people in your life. Now listen, if this video gave you even one thing you didn't know before, I'd really love for you to share it. Not for the views, not for the algorithm, but because there are people in your life, maybe a neighbor, a sibling, a friend from your old workplace, who could genuinely benefit from knowing this information and nobody's told them yet. Hit that share button and send it their way. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell. I cover Social Security, Medicare, retirement benefits, and senior financial topics every single week in plain language, because I believe you deserve real answers, not confusion. And if you have questions, drop them in the comments below. I read them, I take them seriously, and I try to answer as many as I can, or I turn them into future videos so the whole community benefits. And if you want to go deeper on anything I covered today, the Social Security Fairness Act, the CPIE proposal, or the solvency timeline, I've linked some additional resources in the description below. Take a look when you have a moment. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Stay informed, stay engaged, and remember, your voice matters more than you know. I'll see you in the next one.